Hello, and welcome to the fourth installment of Meetings with History Online at the Depot History Center. My name is Marta Kopiniak, and once again I will be your guide through history today. A brief history of our museum is necessary before we start telling another part of the story. The building we are standing here now is a building of an actual former depot that dates back as far as 1893, when a private company, Elektrische Straßenbahn Breslau, built a depot to house their electric trams. The trams have turned out to be a huge success, so the depot grew significantly both in size and manpower. In 1924, the whole company was transferred to the municipality to become part of the municipal transportation agency Städtische Straßenbahn Breslau, and then became known as Depot number 7. Our depot was destroyed the most during World War II, and that was because it was used to store aircraft engines. The municipal transport started working again on May 10, 1945. However, Depot number 7 was not used until 1963. In that year, the Municipal Transportation Agency came back here on Grabiszyńska Street and started using those buildings to house buses this time. And it would keep doing so until the year 2015, when the depot closed up and we took over. But it was not accidental that this particular depot was chosen as a place for our museum, because there's one defining event in the history of our depot. On August 26, 1980, this man, Mr. Tomasz Surowiec, parked his bus across the gate of the depot and made it so that nobody could leave or enter. This way, he, along with the mechanic, Mr. Czesław Sawicki, they started a solidarity sit-in strike that would later on be joined by almost 200 enterprises from the whole of Lower Silesia. The news of the strike traveled fast, as buses and trams were not appearing at stops, but the people of Wrocław supported the strikers. Cardinal Gulbinowicz blessed the strikers, and Reverend Stanisław Orzechowski from St. Lawrence Church celebrated a Holy Mass. The depot became an organizational and informational center for the whole of the region, as members of Lower Silesian democratic opposition and academic circles joined the ranks. The strike had been started in solidarity with shipyard workers in Gdańsk, who had put out 21 demands, ranging from demanding an introduction of free Saturdays, implementation of food coupons for meat, or 3-year paid maternity leave, to compliance with the constitutional rights of every citizen and creation of free trade unions. Because of that, the strike at the depot and all the other enterprises that joined the Inter-Enterprise Strike Committee could not end on its own. They had to wait for the strike in Gdańsk to end. The leaders waited for the confirmation of signing of the Gdańsk agreements, and the confirmation finally came after one of the teams sent to Gdańsk came back with the text of the agreements, signed by Anna Walentynowicz, confirming that it was actually signed and that it applied to the whole of the country, not only the shipyard in Gdańsk. The strike at the depot ended on September 1st, 1980 at 4 a.m. with the start of a 16-month period known as Carnival of Solidarity. During this period, for the first time since World War II, Polish society could make use of freedoms of a democratic state, even if in a limited way. The agreement started a cascade of events which thoroughly remodeled the consciousness of the Polish people. There were many organizations that were created spontaneously in the wake of the creation of Solidarity. Other trade unions, as well as independent press and publishing houses, but also Radio Solidarity, for example. All of this allowed the opposition to break the monopolistic way in which distribution of information and ideas functioned in the Polish People's Republic. After the agreements and a widespread public anticipation for change, personal changes were made in the Communist Party to at least try to amend the situation. The person that was ultimately chosen to do so was General Wojciech Jaruzelski, who in October of 1980 became the first secretary of the Central Committee of the Polish United Workers' Party. Solidarity was, and still to this day is, a trade union, an organization created in order to protect workers and their rights in any relations with employers and authorities. In order to do that, the union needed funds that were provided by its members in a form of small fees that could later on be used to help financially after a member was fired or to pay for a lawyer to represent a member in court. As the year 1981 came to an end, the Lower Silesian Solidarity, along with its leader Władysław Frasyniuk, became worried about the authorities' activities. They were clearly planning something, but no one knew exactly what. That raised the issue of the over 80 million złotych in Solidarity's account that could easily be taken control of by the authorities. Which is why Władysław Frasyniuk, along with Piotr Bednarz, Józef Pinior and Tomasz Surowiec, planned the withdrawal of the money from the bank. On December 3rd, they withdrew the Solidarity's money from its account in the 5th department of the National Bank of Poland in Wrocław. The operation was earlier planned and agreed upon by the director of the bank, Jerzy Aulich, and the chief accountant, Maria Leszczyńska. The plan wouldn't work without their support, especially that of Jerzy Aulich. As a director of the bank, he was obliged to inform his superiors and the secret police that a withdrawal like this was taking place. He did not do it and suffered the consequences, dying prematurely because of the toll it took on him. The same day, the money was delivered to Archbishop Henryk Gulbinowicz, who was being in charge of keeping the money for the time being, while Kazimierz Jerje, who was the Solidarity's treasurer after Pinior's arrest, was in charge of delivering the money to the underground Solidarity structures. Secret police tried to find both the money and the withdrawal confirmations, but they did not succeed. They couldn't fully search church property, and they did not think to look for the withdrawal confirmations in an isotope safe in the Department of Physics of University of Wrocław, where Kazimierz Jerje was employed. His registry allowed for the money to be accounted for by Józef Pinior at the 1990 convention of the Lower Silesian Solidarity. Solidarity's leaders were right. The authorities were planning something, and they took out that money just in time, because only 10 days later, on December 13th, 1981, General Jaruzelski announced on television the introduction of martial law. Tanks were out in the street, massive arrests swept across the whole country, telephones were not working, and children started a compulsory school break. People could not move around freely, even around the city. Militia and the army carried out constant controls, and the media were under total control of the communist government. In the underground, hiding members of Solidarity created a regional strike committee that was supposed to organize the actions of the members in hiding. When propaganda of the necessity of the actions taken by the authorities didn't work, ruthless pacification of the university and the polytechnic started. Pacification was also carried out in several enterprises: Pafawak, Dolmel, Polar and Hutman, among others. Some were disbanded and a whole crew of new employees was introduced. With the introduction of martial law, the opposition had to organize its structures in the underground, while many of its members were in hiding. Underground work included, among other things, organizing and running printing houses. Despite the fact that printing and distributing underground press and books was punishable by imprisonment, the number of press and publishing houses didn't decrease. In fact, Wrocław was one of the most thriving centers of underground publications. Printing technology varied from city to city and from printing house to printing house, but generally it was based on the technology of screen printing, with the tools visible here on display. And what was printed? Mostly samizdats, like the Lower Silesia Bulletin, or the Lower Silesia Solidarity, or Day to Day. Besides press, there were also books, published in hundreds, on matters like history and socio-economical analysis. Publishers took great care in popularizing historical accuracy, for example, information on the Katyn massacre. During the time of martial law, Wrocław was witness to an unprecedented event, the largest illegal demonstration of martial law, the Battle of Wrocław. 4,000 militia and army officers took part in pacification of the city, standing against over 50,000 demonstrators. Sharp ammunition was used, causing the death of Kazimierz Michalczyk and possibly 2 other people. 37 militiamen and 2 army officers were wounded. 645 people were arrested, with over half of them under the age of 25. Solidarity played a key role in Poland's fight for freedom and democracy. It is the most known and recognizable organization, just as are its leaders. Here pictured are Władysław Frasyniuk, Józef Pinior and Piotr Bednarz, public figures to this day. However, Despite the fact that Solidarity was and is the most recognizable, it was not the only one out there. There were many other organizations, some of them local, that were created during and after the creation of Solidarity. One of them was Fighting Solidarity, with its leader, Kornel Morawiecki, who believed that the democratic opposition should take a more aggressive stance against the communist authorities, hence the word fighting. They organized marches and counter-demonstrations, but also created a counter-espionage web for the purpose of infiltrating the secret police. There were also organizations created by students and pupils, like the Independent Students' Union and Inter-School Resistance Committee. However, the most out there and creative opposition organization that has left lasting legacy in the city's landscape is the Orange Alternative. Created by Waldemar Major Friedrich, the Orange Alternative is responsible for creating the image of a dwarf as a symbol of the city. Its members would dress up like those fairy tale creatures, get up to all kinds of mischief and dance around the city. Their goal was to ridicule the country's economic situation, as well as militia and other authorities' representatives. They did that by making militia officers chase dwarfs around the city, and pictures from those events show that they achieved their goal. This concludes the fourth installment of Meetings with History Online. Thank you for being here with us today, and if you have any thoughts and comments, please leave them down below. And I hope I will see you next month for the last installment of Meetings with History Online.